took was one lonely girl to result in the destruction of the entire Tolarian Academy. We are here today to talk about the story of Jhoira, the lonely girl who ended up completely messing up the plans of the mad god Urza. So let us dive into the tale, which starts in the land of Tolaria. This place honestly looks like a postcard to me. Very, very enjoyable, beautiful island. Tolaria actually has some special properties to it that make it very difficult to navigate to the island and find it, thus making it very isolated. It's also a land that at one time was overrun with shapeshifters, but that came to change. Now, we meet Jhoira when she is 18 years old and is an artificer. So you can see in the artwork we're depicting here, this is actually from the card Tinker. This is Jhoira at basically the first time we meet her in the story. She has just come of age, she is an adult now, and you can see in the artwork she is messing around with different artifacts there. She's in that funky ornate looking chair with these crazy, the little contraption in the bottom lower right corner of the artwork is actually a creation she came up with herself to store her tools. It is a animated little insect that stores her tools inside of it and basically works as an assistant. So she is a capable artificer when we meet her, and she is a member of the Tolarian Academy. This is the special magical institution that has been established on Tolaria by Master Malzra. At least that's the name that he goes by with the students. The actual lord of the Tolarian Academy, the head mage there, is Urza, who is a planeswalker who at the time of creation of the Tolarian Academy was over 3,000 years old with the powers of a god. But he is masquerading as a wizard named Malzra because for the purposes that he wanted to go by. It's better that his name doesn't get spread around, right? He is famous in his normal incarnation, so he's basically hiding out here on this island that's very difficult to locate. He has gone ahead and eradicated all of the shapeshifters from the island pretty much, and at this point the island is a no-go zone where he has created his own Tolarian Academy, and the reason that he's being so secretive is because Urza is trying to destroy Phyrexia. Phyrexia being the largest source of evil ever in the multiverse that Magic has ever seen. So Urza wants to destroy Phyrexia, but he's very concerned that they will find out what he is doing and bring ruin to it. He is afraid of sleeper agents. So these sleeper agents, if you take a look at it, it looks human, but its shadow is a big Phyrexian horror, right? These are the types of individuals that Urza is afraid will discover the island, and the reason this whole place is hidden. So just bear that in mind. It will be relevant later in the story. So we have Jhoira. She is 18 years old now. She is fully flowered into adulthood, and she is craving the company of a good man. That is the initial point where we meet her, okay? Now you have to understand that with the Tolarian Academy, Urza, because he's afraid of these sleeper agents, only brings in individuals who are children. So Jhoira was brought to the island as a child because Phyrexian sleeper agents are created in vats and they come out as fully grown adults. So there literally are no children sleeper agents. So to make sure that there are going to be no issues, Urza only imports people who are essentially children and show some level of being a prodigy. I mean, Teferi is another student at this academy, if that gives you any idea of the level of magical power. We're talking about real luminaries here, right? So Urza brings these prodigy children. Now Jhoira's been brought since she was 10 years old to live here. But the thing about Jhoira is she's a Gitu, all right? And the Gitu are these hardy, I wouldn't really exactly call them savage, but they live a brutal life, okay? The Gitu live a brutal, nomadic life. If you take a look at the artwork for a Gitu encampment originally, when it's portrayed in the Urza's block, you can see this mountainous range and these tents that are set up in front of it, right? Like this is a forbidding land. Look at that volcano in the background with all the black fumes coming up off of it. Like, just look at the size of the volcano and the size of the people down in the artwork at the bottom there, and you will realize the scope of this. So this is what Jhoira grew up in. These hardy sort of like, look at these barren lands. You have to be strong to survive. So she comes from a strong survive type warrior people. Gitu sacrificed their life. They believe that they're born of fire and will return to the fire. So this is the hardcore land that Jhoira comes from. You contrast it. I'm gonna have on the second here, up on the screen, take a look at the artwork of the Gitu encampment and these camps that have to be collapsed down at any moment because they may need to move nomadic style versus Tolaria, right? Look at which one would you choose to go to? Where would you like to spend time? The majority of people are going to elect for a place like Tolaria. It's not even a competition, let's be real. So this is the environment that Jhoira grew up in, and thus the men where she comes from are big, hardy, beefy men. And that's what she longs for. There are boys who pine after her at the academy, the most notable being Teferi, who pesters her constantly. And on top of that, he's only 14 years old. And I mean, any kind of like age issue in terms of legality in different parts of the world, put that aside and recognize that almost universally, women are not interested in men who are less mature than them, and a 14-year-old Teferi is incredibly immature. If you need an example of that, the Karn video that I released demonstrates Teferi's just absolute immaturity. So we've got poor Jhoira here, where she's longing for male companionship, and the best options around are young guys that don't turn her crank because they're all just little, like, I'm a little scholar style guy. I mean, take a look at the artwork of Teferi here. This is the first time we see him as a disruptive student. He doesn't look big and macho. And honestly, Jhoira's specifically pining for someone who's tall, handsome, dark, and mysterious. And she emphasizes mysterious when in her thoughts to herself. This mystery is really important. And what you have to recognize as well is that Jhoira is suffering from something that a lot of us suffer from, where we believe that our lives can be improved by including others into it, by like, I'm going to get into a relationship and that's going to make my life better. But that's not really how it works. If you get into a relationship and your life is crummy, you're going to share that crumminess with the person. What you want to do is have a good life that's inviting to bring someone else into it. But when you're young and you haven't had the experience of being in relationships to feel that loss of like, oh, this isn't fulfilling in the way I thought it would be. It's not what I thought I needed. I need, like, what I need needs to come from inside me. But we're getting real deep with the lore today, my friends. We're going all over the place. Regardless, we have Jhoira, who started studying 8 years ago at the Tolarian Academy. You barely get to interact with anybody outside of the students. Maybe every once in a while, somebody who's coming to bring supplies to the island, like a trader that's allowed there, maybe contact with them. But overall, no real contact except with this group of people and no real prospects for her. So basically, one day she is wandering along outside of the Tolarian Academy, and she spots off in the distance that there's something flapping down along the shoreline, and she's not sure what it is. She doesn't realize that this is actually going to be a much bigger deal than just, oh, what's that off in the distance? This will have big impact over time for Tolaria. So she notices it's a ship. But ships are rare here. Like I said, it's a remote location, and Urza has very strong strictures on who can come in. But this is a new shipwreck. She can see that as she gets closer, that the ship is still roughly intact, but it's not going to last for very long. So instead of turning back and heading back to the academy, this sort of stuff is supposed to be reported. Any outside contact is supposed to be reported to Master Mazra, I should say. Malzra? I keep messing it up. Either way, Urza in disguise. I always just want to say Urza. So she's supposed to inform Urza that this has happened. But instead, her curiosity gets the better of her, and she climbs into the ship as the waves are just battering it. Right now, the ship isn't firmly there. It's kind of half embedded in the sand, but the battering of the waves are moving the ship, and she can tell she's not going to have a lot of time to deal with this. So she climbs down into the hold of the ship, and she notices that there's two bunks, and in the bottom bunk, she spots someone. And her first thought is, oh Lord, is this a plague boat? Because what would happen is sometimes plague victims would be put in ships and just sent out onto the waters. So she's just like, oh Lord, am I in a plague boat here? And she turns to leave. And at the last moment, she hears a little sound of stirring, and she turns and looks closer. She sees the face of this man and realizes, oh, he's good looking. He's a good looking man. He looks like he's got a big, strong body. So, being a Gitu woman, she is stronger than your average human. So she has no problem picking this individual up and carrying him off in her arms. And basically she gets to the back of the ship and leaps off, and the force of her leaping off the boat was the last straw as the whole thing kind of shudders and collapses out into the water. Basically she makes it off in the absolute nick of time with her weight shifting, causing the final deterioration. So now she's looking around and she's panicked, because this man meets the conditions in her mind, but she knows what's going to happen. This land of Tolaria is ruled in a harsh way. She doesn't know the underlying reasons of why Malzra does what he does, but she knows that if Malzra finds out about this man, he will be destroyed. You're not allowed to be on this island. Urza will literally destroy him. So she basically takes him to this secret little private reserve area she had created for herself to get away when she needed to escape from Teferi or whatever, just needed some alone me time. She created a little space for herself. She had already crafted an escape route from the actual Tolarian Academy that could get her out onto the beach, and then from there she had her own little hideaway. So she takes this individual who she doesn't know in and lays him down. Now she is acting like a weird half love-struck girl at this point, because he has a fever and he's running hot, and she uses the opportunity to get all handsy with him. You know what I mean? It's a little, she's talking, like, you can tell she's got like a little bit of almost like labored breathing, rushed breathing, the sort of a reaction when you're attracted to somebody. And she doesn't know how to deal with this because this isn't something that happens normally. So now she basically like pours a little bit of water into his mouth to try and nurse him back to health, knowing that basically she's violated the rules of the island. And what she doesn't know as she wanders away is this dude here, he was laying there unconscious, he was faking it. And one of his eyes opens as she walks out of the cabin, and there's a faint metallic tinge to it. So that's where this part of the Jhoira lore cuts off. We will continue on with the next installment of the story in the next Jhoira video. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoy the lore videos and you want to support the channel, join my Patreon. It's the absolute best way to let me know to make more of this exact kind of content, all right? And I want to thank you all for coming by. I'm having a lot of fun here, but for now, rectanglers, roll out!